Hello, and today I'm going to show you how I do bruises with FX makeup. Today I'm using a Graphobian bruise wheel, a makeup sponge, a paintbrush, and I'm also going to be using some setting powder, but it's not really necessary, it just helps the stuff stay on your skin longer. So the makeup sponge, I don't use it just as it is. I tear off the edge of it, so when I stipple on the paint later, it has a nice texture to it and there's no straight edges, and it looks a lot more better like that. So I'm just using a cream paint. It's just a wheel with all the different bruise colors in it. It's called a bruise wheel. I'm also using the paintbrush to start with because I can get the colors exactly where I want them to be. So to start with, I'm going to show you what a bruise looks like when you first get it. Like after a day, this is what the bruise is going to look like. So I start with the tan brownish color in the middle, and I'm going to stipple that onto my arm. Just ignore my fake tattoo there. So I'm just going to stipple it on in a circular pattern so it gives it texture and you can start to see where the bruise is going to be. So now you've got a good base of the tan color. I'm going to add a little bit of the red more in the center of the bruise so you can see how it's darker in the middle and then the bruise fades out. So you want to keep the brush in a stippling motion and you want it to be pretty patchy looking. You don't want to make it like totally just one color or the other because then it's going to look too fake. Now I'm going to take some of that purple mixed with the red. I'm going to add that to the very center of the bruise just to darken it up even more. And with that, you're done with the first level of the bruise. Next, I'm going to show you what it looks like after a few days of having the bruise. So I'm going to start with the red and the tan color mixed together because as the days go on, the bruise is going to get darker, so you want to start with a darker base. So now I'm going to take even more red and mix that with the purple to make the bruise even more darker and keeping with the splotching motion to keep it patchy looking. So now I'm going to add some more color to this bruise by taking the blue and putting it around the edge of the red and purple. So now I'm just adding in a little bit more texture to the bruise, and with that you're pretty much done with the second stage. Now this level of a bruise is going to be pretty dark and really colorful, so I'm starting off with just the red, and I am making the base with that red and speckling it on in a good texture on my arm. Now I'm taking some more red and just a little bit of tan and darkening up that same area. So now I'm going to take that blue color again from before and kind of dab it around randomly where I see fit. So now I'm going to use that yellow and green in the palette, and the older a bruise is, the more yellow and the more green it's going to have, and you want to put these colors around the very edge of the bruise. You want to make sure you keep the bruise very textured and make sure there's no harsh lines in it, and make sure it fades evenly into the skin. So now after you're satisfied with your yellow and green on your bruise, you're done with the third stage. So now you have 1, 2, 3 different bruises on your arm. You're going to take that sponge I showed you from earlier, and I'm just going to add a little bit extra texture to everything by mixing the red and the tan just a little bit, so it looks a little bit more veiny on the bruises, because you would have broken veins in a normal bruise. And after you're happy with how everything looks, you're going to set the bruises with some transparent setting powder. I just have this from my FX makeup kit, and you just get a little bit on your sponge. A little bit goes a long way, and you just dab it onto all of your where your cream paint is, and it makes the paint matte and it stays on your skin for a long time. This stuff also gets like everywhere, so make sure to clean up your workstation after. And now you know how to fake bruises with FX makeup. You can also do this with eyeshadows if you have the right colors. You don't necessarily need the fancy cream paints that I use. I just find them easier to work with. So now I'm going to show you how to do a black eye. First things first, I just put my hair back because getting cream paint out of your hair is not fun. I'm going to be using the same bruise palette as before and the exact same sponge and brush I was using before. So I'm starting this off a little bit different than I was before. I'm starting with the sponge with the tan and red, and you're going to put that around your socket. And the reason I do this is because you have a lot more area to cover, and using the sponge is easier to cover more area than with the brush. Now I've got a good base of the red, and I'm going to take my brush and darken it up a little bit with the red and purple just to add even more texture to it and to get that color exactly where I want it to go. You can't really see too much right now because I have a mirror off to the side, but where you want to concentrate that darker color is on the inside of your socket and just kind of follow a C shape around your eye because that's where the most pressure would have been. So now I'm going to take even more of that purple just to darken up some spots that I want, and especially where your dark eye bag would be, because there's a lot of soft tissue there that would have been heavily bruised. So now I'm going to take the other three colors in the bruise wheel and just kind of put them where I want them to go. I mostly just eyeball this stuff, but the more colorful the bruises, those colors are going to be on the outside of it, like the yellow and green are going to be from the bruise fading, and they're going to be on the farther outside of the bruise. As you do this more, you just kind of learn to know where to put the colors where and in what shape. Bruises were the first thing I learned how to do, so I'm quite happy with the technique I've developed on how to do them. So you can just kind of stop whenever you're happy with the bruise, and just like the ones on my arm, I'm just going to take a little bit of powder to make the bruise matte and have it more realistic looking. So now I'm just going to show you a few of the things that you can use to make these bruises with. First, I just show you the two bruise wheels I have. They're both just Graphobia and cream paints. And I also have this eyeshadow palette, which is the eyeshadow palette I would use if I was making bruises. It's got yellows and reds and greens in it, so you can make bruises with that too. And I also have this palette. It's Wet n Wild Makeup. It was from Halloween a few years ago. You can see it's been pretty used, but it was fairly cheap if you want to work with cream paints. Just use some sort of cheap makeup that comes out around Halloween, and you can start practicing with that. And for now, thank you and goodbye.